Hello there, everybody. This is Dr. Dino, or Doc for short, here with another Paleo stream. It's been a little bit since our last one. I believe it's been a little bit over a week. I'm hoping to make these more of a weekly thing when I can swing them, but it's been a little busy. Uh, the stream just started, so we're going to give people a couple minutes to file on in, but I hope y'all are ready. We have a rather interesting adventure for tonight, let's just say. It. And hello to Caden, Vanessa, and the Mandas in the chat. Hello, hello. Do-do-do-do-do-do. All right. Well, hope everyone out there had a good day, or for any Australians who might be joining us, I hope you will have a good day. Uh, I worked today, drove quite a bit, and I'm a little tired, but a little too excited for this to just let it go. And also, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna write something super duper quick. I just figured since this is a stream with drink triggers, I should probably write down what those triggers are for people if they join the stream. Just go ahead and get those down. Let me know what y'all are drinking out there in the world while you watch this. Do-do-do. Let's see, and I had one more rule. And okie dokie. I'll just go ahead and set that to scroll, and we are good to. Well, I guess we might as well get started. So, for anyone who has not seen these before, this is a little series I like to call a paleo. Well, it's what I like to call a paleo stream. Uh, it's a series of fundraisers that I am running to try and help build up some money for this summer so I can afford to go do field work. I would be doing it anyway, but the fewer days I have to take off, or sorry, but the fewer days I have to work, the more field work I can do. And for this fundraising stream, we're going to be doing a little bit of drinking. Not too much. I'm not going to get drunk on stream. Might get a little tipsy and silly, though, just for fun. As for the rules, they are as follows. So, often when I do these streams, I use the video game Jurassic World Evolution 2 to show you guys what the creatures would have looked like. I'll be doing that here as well. In this game, you can give the dinosaurs or other creatures nicknames. So if you have any fun nicknames you'd like to give to any of the weird creatures we see today, if you send in a super chat, you can name something. Let's say for every $2 you spend is another creature you can name, but we might lose track of that. Anyway, any super chat that is $5 or more will be another drink. So if you send in a $5 super chat and name something, then that's 2 drinks. And also, when we move to the next creature in our environment, we'll be taking a drink for that. As for what to drink, if you'd like to drink something alcoholic or non-alcoholic, it's all up to you. I, for my part, am trying a rum and coke for the first time. See how this tastes. I've had worse. I've had worse. I'm sure that sounds very convincing. With that said, I think it's about time we get started. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the game here. Do, 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 do. Alrighty. Oh, and I always forget to do this with this game, but I should probably set it to daytime so we can actually see the creatures. That'd probably be a little bit helpful. Anywho, in today's stream, we are exploring the wonderful land. I'll get those buildings out of the way. The wonderful land of late Cretaceous Madagascar. Now, for those who don't know, Madagascar is an island, and it has been an island for quite a long time. It's been all on its own since about the mid late Cretaceous. Since that time, it's developed some rather strange critters, I guess you could say. They're very weird today. Lemurs, for example, are only found in Australia. Wow, Australia are only found in Madagascar today. There's a lot of special reptiles too. Oh, and thank you, Vanessa, for a $5 super chat. So that's a drink, folks. That's one. Yeah, maybe that's worse than I thought. Oh well. So islands. Islands are interesting when it comes to evolution because when things get stuck on an island, they get weird. And they can get weird in one of two ways. Either they can stay relatively the same while the creatures on the mainland change drastically, or the creatures on the mainland stay about the same while the island creatures change drastically. And Madagascar has done a little bit of both. Like I mentioned before, modern lemurs in Madagascar have remained a lot or have remained a lot more similar to their ancestors than any other primates in the world. And we have a $20 super chat. Okay, this is working really well. Let's say one drink per $5, so that's four. Oh boy. One, two, three. Yeah, I think I'm gonna regret this, but four. Oof. Geez. We haven't even gotten into the rock formation. We're already 5 drinks in. Okay. So, Madagascar, late Cretaceous. Let's go there. Um, During the late Cretaceous, of course, we have lots of dinosaurs, lots of crocodilians, lots of weird mammals, all kinds of things. And Madagascar is no exception to this. Now, for those who don't know, Madagascar was once part of a giant southern supercontinent called Gondwana. Gondwana was, like I said, a supercontinent made up of a few of our modern continents. There was Antarctica, Australia, Africa, South America, India, and Madagascar. And I know two of those aren't continents, but you can consider them subcontinents. So all those land masses used to be all together, and then over the course of the Mesozoic, the time the dinosaurs ruled the earth, they split apart. And I see you're getting along with Al pretty well, Vanessa. That's good. Al's fun. Um anyway, all these continents split apart. They split apart in an order. Um we won't go into all the orders, but basically at one point India and Madagascar split off together. And then they split apart again, leaving us with Madagascar down by the southeast coast of Africa and India moving up into Asia to create the Himalaya Mountains. Now that means that the dinosaurs from India and Madagascar are really similar. And that's kind of interesting. But that might be a story for another day if we ever do Cretaceous India. For now, I will say that Of these Cretaceous rocks from Madagascar, there is one rock formation that is more famous than the others. This is known as the Maverano Formation. And I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly. Excuse me. I've tried to capture the Maverano pretty well here. It would have been an arid to semi-arid landscape, lots of sand, lots of mud, and lots of different types of plants. It would have been a very seasonal environment. So right now you can kind of think of this as being during the wet season. The rivers and lakes are nice and high, and water is cascading down into the ocean. There is no ocean here because this map is actually in Arizona, but you get the idea, right? You have a big body of water with lots of streams and rivers flowing into the sea. And since this environment also had very different seasons, a very solid wet and a very solid dry season, that tends to drag animals between two very different pressures. Some of them are going to be better adapted for the wet part of the year, some are better adapted for the dry part of the year, and they're constantly being torn between the two. And when you have a situation like that, it tends to drive evolution a little crazy. And I figured, what better way to start this discussion of this Mevarano formation with all its crazy critters than with a really weird creature that we don't have a modern analog for. And this one was not on the poll that I posted earlier today, but I would like to introduce you all to Simosuchus. Simosuchus here is a land-living crocodilian, of which uh we don't really have many land-living crocs today. Oh, and sorry, I see something in the chat I should probably explain. Uh hey Caden, you're gonna love this. Vanessa here knows Mary Schweitzer. So if you have any questions, here's your chance to ask her. And yes, I'll just say VJ Manda for short instead of your whole name every time. Yes, VJ Manda, they do gallop. That is a little weird. Uh, but I think they're weird in a really, really cool way. See, Simosuchus here not only lived on land, it's also herbivorous. And we don't have any herbivorous crocodilians today. We have some caimans that will eat fruit on occasion, but as far as we know, Simosuchus was an obligate herbivore. So probably would have munched on grasses, leaves, fruits, nuts, berries, whatever it could get its little jaws on. And I do mean little. This dinosaur, this crocodile, is about the size of a small dog. It's tiny. And there are some reconstructions of it that are absolutely adorable. And the funny thing is, we actually have a ton of its skeleton as well. So I am going to drop that shared screen. Okay, VJ Manda, you don't think it's cute yet. So this is its skeleton. We actually have a lot of specimens of Simosuchus, so we have a really great idea of what it looked like from head to toe. And also, this photo here, this is what the bones from the Maverano Formation look like. A lot of fossils will be discolored. They'll be like a dark brown or a black, sometimes a gray. The Maverano Formation is really, really weird in that its fossils are preserved white, sometimes even a whitish pink color, almost like they just came out of the animal. And as we'll get into with some of the creatures we'll see later, the preservation is unbelievably beautiful. The bones really do look like they came from something that died yesterday. It's insane. And I'm not jealous at all, though I would love to go dig here someday. Anyway, this is what Simasuke's skeleton looks like. And if you want to see a more realistic reconstruction, we have this. Excuse me for a sec. Sorry, I had to sneeze. This is a life reconstruction of Simasuke's. This is the cutest crocodilian to ever live, bar none, and I will not stand down on that. This thing is absolutely adorable, and I love it. There is one thing I hate about this reconstruction, though, and that is that these statues are at the Ark Encounter in Kentucky, a young Earth creation museum, which I adore. Oh, Lethargo G. Peterson has become a member. Thank you very much. You know what? That is another thing I can enter into the drink triggers actually, because you guys have to pay to become a member. I'll go ahead and add that quick. Do. Move to a new critter. And if someone purchases a membership, there we go. So that is added to the ticker now. So thank you, Lethargo. And even though it wasn't on the even though it wasn't up here at the time, drink for the membership. Thank you very much. Ugh. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more Coke to this, and maybe it'll taste a little better. We'll see. We'll see how that helps. Oh, and I guess I have the chance to try it right away, because VJ Manda has just sent in a super sticker. You know what? We'll count that. Thank you very much. Let's hope I don't die. Oh, that is better. Huh. Guess I just had the ratios wrong. Oh, and Caden here is right. A documentary that came out recently called Prehistoric Planet. Sukus had a fabulous version of Simasukus. Absolutely adorable. Uh, I would go so far as to call him handsome, and I love him. But yes, and I would highly recommend checking out Prehistoric Planet. A lot of fabulous dinosaur reconstructions, the most up to date ones you can find in almost every case. It's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Um, Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot more to really say about Simasukus. Like I've already said, really fascinating critter, really cute, really cool. But it's not the only crocodilian known from this formation. As you can probably guess, a rock formation with this much water probably has quite a few crocodilians in it. And Samasuchus isn't even the only land crocodilian we have. Now, I couldn't find a mod for this one, uh, like I did for the Samasuchus, so in the game, this new critter will be acted by a mod for a Mechasuchus, another land living crocodilian. And it is standing in for, and I have to concentrate to say this, Araripasuchus. Araripasuchus. And also, since we have swapped to another creature, uh, drink time. So, Araripasuchus here is a step towards a more conventional crocodilian that you're probably used to. Case in point, it's carnivorous. Very solidly carnivorous. Though, like some crocodilians today may have munched on the occasional fruit if it had the chance. And I'll get to one that's in the sun. Oh, they all look pretty similar. Oh, oh, look at that. Oh, they're doing little social animation. That's cute. Yeah, that's pretty cute. Doo-doo. Okay. Anyway, uh, yes, Caden. This is technically Makasuchus. It's standing in for Aroripesukis. With that said, I will go ahead and show, if I can find it, the actual bones for this little critter. So this is its skull. And like I was just saying, if you know anything about fossils and you look at this, you'd think this was recent. This looks like something you found in a riverbed in modern day, or maybe pulled out of some rocks that were a million years old at most. This is 66 to 70 million years old, and it looks brand new. I so I have prepared dinosaur bones. I've prepared modern bones. I've worked with crocodile skulls. I've prepared both crocodile and alligator skulls. This looks like something that I would have just worked on. It's beautiful. And it was probably terrestrial. Now, if I recall correctly, all we really have of Aroripesukis is the skull, but the skull is enough to identify it with a group of crocodilians called Notosuchians. Many of these are terrestrial. Semasuchus has historically been in this group. I'm not certain if it is currently in this group. But, you know, go figure land crocs were a thing. They couldn't stay in the water. And the funny thing is, their extinction, just land crocodilians in general, their extinction is very recent. We had land living crocodiles in areas like South America up until I believe 10 million years ago. Let me double check. You know, Suka's extinction. Yep, we had actually giant land living crocodilians living as recently as about 10 million years ago. Their extinction is very modern. Uh, Now, why don't we have any land living crocs anymore? Honestly, that's a really good question. Many of our modern crocodilians are waterbound ambush specialists, if that makes any sense. So, typically in evolution, you have an animal, well, you have a group of animals that separate into a bunch of different groups. Each of these groups will be specialized for different things in their environment. And if there's a massive extinction event or the environment suddenly shifts, not all of them are going to be able to survive. And you'll be left with one or maybe even none surviving. This happens really often. It happened with the non avian dinosaurs. Anything that wasn't a bird in the dinosaur line is completely gone. These land living crocs are kind of like those dinosaurs. Kind of weird to think of our modern crocs as the birds, huh? But at any rate, that's Aroripesukis. It's not as weird as Semasuchus, but it is still an odd little critter. And I do mean little. Aroripesukis is actually a fairly small crocodilian. Ripesukis. I can never spell it. Um, but over here is a reconstruction next to a human. It was actually very small. A lot of these land crocodiles were smaller than many of our modern crocodiles, though not in every case. It's just a weird thing. Maybe their body plan works better on land when they're small, in most cases. And we have a question here. Lethargo asks, could the spread of grasslands have anything to do with the lack of land crocs? So that's an interesting question, but I would actually say no. And I would say no because of a certain land croc we had living as late as about 10 million years ago. This nightmare is Barina sucus, and it lived on the pampas of South America. Yes, that is its actual size. No, I do not like it. Ugh. Paleontology is really fun. You get to learn a lot about a lot of really interesting things. But sometimes you just find horror shows like this terrifying. Anyway, uh, with our last crocodilian of the Mavorano, though, I actually don't have an analog for it in the game. Instead, I'll simply show you its skull. This is Mahajanga sucus, or the crocodile from Mahajanga, which is which is the area where most of these fossils have been found. You'll also see this later shortened to Majunga. If you know dinosaurs, you know what'll be coming later. Uh, anyway, Mahajangasuchus was a much more conventional crocodilian, though you probably wouldn't guess that from how deep that lower jaw is. It would have been semi aquatic, probably an ambush predator like our modern crocodilians, and it was about the size of a large American alligator. So, actually, pretty sizable. Pretty interesting. Not as weird as our previous crocodilians, but still interesting. And also, since I swapped to it, little drink. I will also say, if you would like to see this skull for yourself and you live in the United States, this is at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. The Field Museum actually has a rather historic partnership uh, with Madagascar. They did a ton of research with a lot of these fossils. They helped excavate them. There's a long history behind it. And that's why the Field Museum has so many fossils, or at least fossil casts nowadays, from Madagascar. It has the Mahajangasuchus here. It has the Semasuchus. And it has some other critters we'll be seeing later. Also, I apologize. I just realized I've been forgetting to tell you what their names mean. Uh, that's my bad. So, Semasuchus, the first crocodilian we looked at, actually means pug-nosed crocodile. Hence its common name of the pug croc. And looking at its face, you can probably guess how it got that name. Aroripessuchus, meanwhile, means the crocodile from Aripe. That's actually named after a region in Brazil, because members of the Aroripessuchus genus are found throughout Gondwana, which is really interesting. And then I already told you what Mahajangasuchus means. It is the crocodile from Mahajanga. Anyway, if we are ready to move on to our next creature of the evening, we have a little treat. Our next animal is one of the members of today's poll. If anyone recalls, I put out a poll earlier today asking people what they were most excited to see tonight. Your options were the murder sausage, Mr. British, the demon toad, or literally just a sauropod but small. It wound up being a tie between the murder sausage and the demon toad. And the poor little sauropod got 0 votes. Uh, poor thing, poor thing. Well, let us meet the devil toad. This is Beelzebufo. And if you know anything about theology, you probably recognize at least a part of that name. Beelzebufo is a fun little portmanteau. So when you take two words and you partially fuse them together where they sound similar, it's a portmanteau of Beelzebub, you know, Satan, or at least a demon. I'm just realizing my camera is flipped, so left to right. Beelzebub, and then Bufo, which means frog. So it is literally demon frog or devil toad. And then its species name is Ampinga, meaning armored. Because Beelzebufo here was not only, as you can probably tell, a rather large amphibian. So here's a pencil and a frog compared to this thing. It also had a weirdly robust skeleton, especially for a frog. Okay. And I'm seeing some people in the chat are wanting to name something Beelzebub. Unfortunately, I don't have a mod for Beelzebufo, but if there's a creature you want to name later, feel free. For now, though, this is the skeleton of Beelzebufo, or at least a reconstructed skeleton. And the weird thing about it is that all of this is its head. If you've never seen a frog skeleton before, they have absurdly huge heads. Also, I realize I need to take a drink again because we swapped to another critter. Yeah, it's still not that bad. But yes, frogs have really weirdly huge heads. Especially certain groups of frogs, such as the horned frogs, which are probably Beelzebufo's closest living relatives. Now, does that mean that Beelzebufo had horns like we see in this reconstruction? Not necessarily, but it's kind of fun to think about. And also, this is another critter that was featured in the series Prehistoric Planet. Looking a little extra chunky here compared to the other reconstructions. Once again, highly recommend this documentary. And the Beelzebufo sequences are arguably some of the best. It has no thoughts. It is just a frog. The only issue is that this frog is big enough to eat baby dinosaurs, and it does. Now, as for how big Beelzebufo was, if I recall, it actually had a slight downsize recently. But even with that, it's still a rather large frog. Rather large frog. Too big, some might say. Me included. But then again, I tend to say that for a lot of things. Beelzebufo is also a really interesting critter that has been featured in a lot of media. Mostly just because it's a giant frog. I mean, that's pretty interesting. If you are a fan of any video games, the game Ark Survival Evolved, for example, has an oversized Beelzebufo that you can ride. It's it's something all right. It's something all right. Uh, but like I've been saying this entire time, when you get an island that's just isolated, you get a lot of really, really weird creatures. Giant frogs like this are just one example, but they're not the only one. They're not the only example. For example, in this weird and wondrous land, well, sorry, let me start again. So, as I've already hinted at, the Mavarana Formation has exceptional fossil preservation. The fossils are preserved absolutely beautifully. They're preserved in 3D, which is rare for fossils to not be super crushed. And when you have a situation where you have exceptionally preserved fossils, you tend to get a lot of fossils you wouldn't normally find. Now, fairly complete frogs like Beelzebuffa are just one example. But the real rarity is a bird. We have several birds from the Mavarano, and a lot of them are really well preserved. So this is a bird called, and I'm probably going to mess this up a few times later, Falcatakili. Now, Falcatakili is a combination of Latin and Malagasy, the local language in Madagascar, which is a more modern trend in paleontology, but it's something I really appreciate. Just acknowledging that these creatures come from all over the world, so they should probably incorporate some part of the local culture into their name. And its name means small scythe, named for the shape of its beak. And let me see if I can pull up a picture of its fossils. Do. I can indeed. If it will load. Dear. No nature, I don't want to pay you 30 bucks. So, in here is the skull of Falcatakili. You can see its beak here. You can see how it got the name Scythe Beak. There's individual bones of the eye preserved, and the texture on the bones are like you just plucked them out of a bird. Beautiful preservation. Absolutely beautiful. But it's not the only bird we know from this area. In fact, there's something else that may have flown, but might not be a bird. And really quick, I'm just going to take 2 drinks so I don't forget for the next creature and to drink for this critter. Okay. Now this is Rahonavis. Now, it may not look too spectacular to you right now, but Rahonavis is a really, really weird little critter. Now, as you can probably guess, it is a small dinosaur. I mean, that's pretty easy to tell, right? The weird thing about Rahonavis is we're not entirely certain what type of dinosaur it is. Now, I'm trying to see if I can find a picture that just shows all of the bones we have. Okay, doesn't look like I can find one, and I'm not going to hunt for 20 minutes on stream. So, we have a lot of bones from Rahonavis, and actually, if you look close, they are highlighted here. The actual bones are in white, the shaded bones are hypothesized from related animals. So, we have a foot, the legs, the pelvis, the base of the tail, some back vertebrae, and some elements of the chest and arms. From these bones, we can tell that one, okay, this is obviously a dinosaur. So we got that figured out. We know that it is a parave. Now a parave is basically all of the dinosaurs that are more closely related to modern birds than they are to T-Rex. And that's a larger section of dinosaurs than you probably think. Yet also smaller at the same time. It's weird. We know it is probably an avialen. Well, no, sorry. We know it's a parave. Paravians include some dinosaurs such as avialens, which are modern birds, dromaeosaurs, such as Velociraptor, and troodontids, which are sort of like Velociraptor, but a lot more lightly built. Now, why is this important? It's important because within these three lineages, it appears that flight may have evolved at least 3 times independently. Let's start with the avialens. Obviously, some of them learned how to fly, because this is the line that leads to modern birds. Within aviale, though, there's a second little group of avialens called the Scansoriopterigids. I know, $5 word, big word. But they're little birds with wings like bats. And that is as weird as it sounds. But that represents a completely different evolution of flight from our modern birds, because they're flying in a completely different way. So that's twice that flight has evolved in dinosaurs. Now let's go to dromaeosaurs. Within dromaeosaurs, there are some smaller ones that appear to have been able to fly. One of these is Microraptor from China. Microraptor is, as you can probably guess from the name, a tiny little raptor. But it's extra weird because it doesn't have 2 wings, it has 4. It has wings on its arms and on its legs. So it has 4 wings in total. That's an arrangement that no modern bird has. And it's definitely a dromaeosaur. So that's a 3rd time that flight has evolved independently. Then we have Rahonavis. Rahonavis here appears to have been capable of flight. But it is not an avialan. It's not a Scansoriopterygid. And it's not a normal dromaeosaur. It's flip-flopped in the past few years. It keeps going back and forth. But Rahonavis is probably either a troodontid or a special group of dromaeosaurs called an unenlagine. Now, they're their own special radiation of dromaeosaurs, separate from the others. So they're not closely related to Microraptor. If Rahonavis is either a troodontid or an unenlagine, this would be the 4th time that dinosaurs evolved flight, completely independent of any other group. It's not ancestral to all these groups as far as we currently know. They evolved it independently. It's just how to tell that you're destined for something, right? Like 4 times. Flight, something that has only been achieved by, if I recall, 3 lineages of vertebrates, so animals with a backbone: bats, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. And then dinosaurs do it possibly up to 4 times. It's it's actually absurd. Uh, with that said, we have a we have a super sticker from Vanessa. Thank you very much. That is a drink. Thank you. Ooh. And I know that was a little rant there. I apologize for ranting, but Rahonavis is really, really weird. And again, depending on what it is, dinosaurs could have evolved flight 4 times. That's more than any other group of vertebrates combined, including dinosaurs. Ah, it's it's crazy. It really is crazy. With that said, how about we move to something bigger? Because it's not just little critters on this little island of Madagascar. There are some bigger animals as well, including sauropods. Now, this picture here is also from the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago. This is a small skeleton of a dinosaur called Rapatosaurus. Okay, and Vanessa here is saying dinosaurs may have evolved flight 5 times. Okay, I want to hear the 5th time because I've heard birds, Scansoraptorigids, possibly Unanlagines, and Dromaeosaurs. What's the 5th? I want to know. I'm curious. Sauropod. Vanessa, you hate sauropods. Sorry. Rapatosaurus. This thing. What is it? And also, I need a drink. Rapatosaurus is a sauropod, as you can probably tell. Within sauropods themselves, it is within a group called the titanosaurs. Titanosaurs are a group of fairly derived, fairly far along sauropods in their evolution. This is the lineage that gets really big. Like, we're talking whales walking on land. Big. They get really long, really tall, really heavy, and really successful. As far as we know right now, they're the only group of sauropods that see to the end of the age of dinosaurs. And they are found, just thinking, they are found on every continent except Antarctica. And that might just be because we haven't found them yet, because Antarctica has a lot of fossils. But it's really hard to hunt for dinosaurs in. But they're absurdly successful, they're everywhere, and they take on a lot of weird forms. Because as part of going everywhere, titanosaurs tended to get stuck in places, like deserts, or forests, or islands. Now keep in mind that Madagascar is not a small island. It's one of the largest islands in the world. But even so, when large animals get trapped on islands, they tend to shrink. Sometimes they shrink a ton, sometimes they shrink a little. Rapatosaurus appears to have shrunk a little bit, because this is not an adult here, what you're seeing now. This Rapatosaurus is a juvenile, and as far as I'm aware, it's the most complete one we have. But we do have bones from adults. And give me a moment to pull them up. But they probably would have looked. Oh, Well, that's grim to come back to. The predators all died. That's my bad. Um, uh, whoops. Um, whoops. To distract things, I'm gonna release the dinosaurs and take a drink. Now, the animation for these guys coming out is a little wonky, but but it's fine once they start just walking. This is probably about the size and shape an adult Rapatosaurus would have had. And if you think this looks weird, you're right. Titanosaurs look really weird, even compared to other oh, shut up, Vanessa. Sorry. Even compared to other sauropods, uh, titanosaurs look weird. They get these really long, really thick necks, they get shorter tails, and they put a lot of weight on their front legs. They're weird. They're really, really weird. And Rapatosaurus is one of them. And we actually have quite a bit of the skeleton. Um, so the holotype, or the first one found, consists of most of the main skeleton. And then we have several skulls and other parts of the body from adults. So we actually have most of this dinosaur skeleton. And we can say semi confidently it probably would have looked something like this. Which, for a titanosaur, is actually really special because they tend to get so big that they only preserve portions of their body. And I'll just go ahead and, ooh, that one's pretty. I'll just go ahead and release the others while we're working on it. But yes, Rapatosaurus was a small, though not entirely dwarf, titanosaur sauropod. It was not big enough that it could have escaped predation, unfortunately. We'll get to that in a little bit. But it is big enough that it was probably the largest plant eater on Cretaceous Madagascar. As for what they would have eaten, well, trees, bushes, anything they could get in their mouths. Sauropods do not appear to have been particularly picky. They're basically walking stomachs. Which I suppose is both confusing, startling, and admirable at the same time. But they're not even the only sauropods we have. Madagascar, big an island as it is, actually has several sauropods, at least two, as far as I can tell. I also apologize, I forgot a couple names in my excitement over Rahonavis. Rahonavis' full name is Rahonavis ostromi, or Ostrom's cloud menace. Ostromi is after John Ostrom, a very famous paleontologist who was very important in establishing the link between dinosaurs and birds. And Rahonavis is a combination of Malagasy words, meaning cloud menace or flying menace. Rapatosaurus, meanwhile, is named after a creature in folklore. Uh, it's named after a creature in folklore that is sort of a mischievous giant, which I think is a pretty fun name. But like I said, it's not the only sauropod. Now, unfortunately, this next one is so poorly known that there are no mods for it for this game. So we have to use a stand-in. So the dinosaur coming out of this hatchery crashed my game. Okay. You worked earlier today. Why are you crashing? Oh boy, this happens sometimes. Sometimes the game wants to work, sometimes it doesn't. Let me go ahead and bring it back up. I actually don't know what happened. Sometimes that just happens. Whoops. Vanessa says Rapatosaurus came from a sci-fi show. I am curious what you're referencing, my friend. I am very curious what you're referencing. Um, all right, let's see if it crashes this time when it loads back up. For those who don't know, I modify my game, meaning I use mods. That's the shorthand, just to give more creature variety, especially for shows like this. Sometimes they mess with the game's internal coding though, and it breaks it. Come on, okay. You worked earlier. There we go. Uh, there we go. Vanessa says came from a sci-fi show with gorgeous osteoderms. Do you mean it was featured in a show? If so, I'm curious which one. Yes, Caden. Curse you, Perry the platypus. Anyway, this troublesome Camarasaurus here is standing in for a very, very mysterious sauropod from the Maverano called Vahini or Vahini. I'm not sure how to say it. It is Vahiny. I'm going to go with Vahini. Vahini is known from a brain case. And I do mean a brain case. Um, it is known from. Okay, these guys are walking really weird. Um, but it's known from one tiny piece of its skull, which is interesting. Most of the time, the skulls are the hardest things to find for sauropods. Um, okay, and these guys are just turning in circles, I guess. But the brain case is diagnostic enough for us to know that it is a titanosaur like Rapatosaurus, but not Rapatosaurus itself. Malagasy? I mean, that's the language I've been referencing. I hope I've said it right. And how do I say it again? Vahini's name is actually Malagasy too. It means traveler, which I think is interesting. I mean, it's a nice name. Um, with that said, with just a brain case, we really can't say what exactly it looked like. It was probably something like this, because this design here is sort of a general version of this type of sauropod, even though they keep breaking their backs to turn in circles, which is kind of weirding me out, but I guess that's what they do. I'm not sure. Bronto Titano Rapeto? I'm not sure what you're referencing, Vanessa. I'm sorry. Also, drink for switching to Vahini. I will say, interestingly, though, the brain case we have for this dinosaur is most similar to sauropods from India. Which, as you might recall, Madagascar did split from India last of all the other subcontinents. So it makes sense that some of the dinosaurs would be most similar to Indian dinosaurs. And Vahini here is one of the last creatures we will be looking at, unfortunately. We have two more, both of which are very interesting and I anticipate will take quite a bit to talk about. Um, Vanessa says it was just in a random show, trying to remember, but it's so cool you remember. Um, if you're meaning that Rapatosaurus was shown in a show, um, I know it was shown in Dinosaur Revolution, thing that came out in the early 2010s. It's also more recently been shown in Prehistoric Planet again. But I mean, I did a lot of research on this formation before I do this stream. That's part of why they're kind of spread out on a weekly or semi-weekly basis. I actually put a lot of research into these. I look up the paleo environment and try to recreate it. Sometimes I fail. And I also look up as many of the creatures I can and I share the interesting ones. And there really are a lot. There's a lot that I unfortunately can't show in the game here. There's more I could show, but I don't know if people would be interested. Uh, for instance, there are actually a lot of snakes known from the Mavarona Formation. Uh, one of the one of the more well known is called Matsoya, which I'll just go ahead and pull it up. Matsoya is a large genus of snake, probably similar in size to modern boas or anacondas known from Madagascar. Uh, like modern boas and anacondas, it probably would have hunted smaller prey. Interestingly, Matsoya here, though, is known from a group of snakes that have a more, how do I put this? A less kinetic skull than a lot of modern snakes. By that I mean their skulls are fairly rigid and they really don't move a whole lot. Modern snakes can basically take apart their skull to swallow a big prey item. Matsoids couldn't, meaning they were probably limited to smaller prey. Um, I believe the one from Madagascar, we just have vertebrae. I don't think we have a skull. From relatives, sorry, I'm just thinking back to the research I did. From relatives, it probably wasn't venomous. It may have been more of a constrictor, but I'm not certain on that. Uh, but yeah, I do my research on these things. There's a lot of really weird, really interesting critters from this formation. In fact, there are even some really weird mammals. Dalatherium. For example, another thing featured in Prehistoric Planet here. Um, there is an animal called Adalatherium. Adalatherium is a really, really weird mammal, and there's a lot we can probably learn from it, but as far as I know, the research is still ongoing. But there's a lot of weird critters. I'm trying to focus on, I guess you could say, some of the more interesting ones that are easier to show. But if anyone is interested by any of the things I bring up in these streams, please do go and look these things up. The information is out there and there's a ton to learn. And I always try to encourage people to learn. I mean, heck, if you can show I was wrong on anything in these streams, please do tell me. Because one, I want to improve and I want to be better. And two, no one's right about everything. I got some things wrong, I'm sure. Everyone does. Oh, and Vanessa confirms Rapatosaurus was in Prehistoric Planet. Yep. All right. With that said, we have two other dinosaurs from this area that I would like to show you all. And they are really weird dinosaurs. Uh, so, for a bit of background, the dinosaurs we've seen so far are sauropods and bird things. I know, quite a wide selection. But surprise, surprise, there were a lot of dinosaurs. Focusing on the meat-eating dinosaurs for a second, the theropods, there are a few main lineages. And let me try to pull up. Let me try to pull up a graph to help illustrate this better. This will work if it can open up. Stop sharing that. Show. Sorry, Vanessa, I think you misspelled that. I think you meant to say that's the beauty of science over here. Please do not be silent if I got something wrong. Please tell me what I got wrong. YouTube doesn't like people to put links in the comments, but if you can like cite a paper, like tell me the authors, the title, where it was published, all that, I will happily admit I was wrong. Please do that. Anyway, so this is a rough phylogeny of dinosaurs, or of theropod dinosaurs. So the meat-eating dinosaurs, that's where we are. There are a few nitpicks I could put here, but it's right for the most part. Basically, down here at the very bottom, you have very primitive theropods. Things like Coelophysis or Dilophosaurus that you might recognize from some movies. Over on this end, you have birds and things like dromaeosaurs, the raptor dinosaurs. At each of these splits here, there are major evolution. There are major things that happen in terms of evolution. There are major advancements. Advancements, you could say, in the theropod body plan and skeleton. But right here at the base, before most of the groups you recognize diverge, there's a small group called the ceratosaurs. Now, this group is named after the very famous Ceratosaurus from the Jurassic of North America. And I'll just go ahead and put some photos of it on screen. Very famous dinosaur, was seen in Jurassic Park 3. Very cool dinosaur, actually. I really like Ceratosaurus. But what a lot of people don't know is that the Ceratosaur lineage continued all the way to the end of dinosaurs. See, the only one you hear about is Ceratosaurus, so a lot of people think they went extinct. But they continued. Not a lot of them in the northern hemisphere, though. Weirdly enough, a lot of ceratosaurs continued on in the southern hemisphere. And toward the end of the age of dinosaurs, they basically just took over. But even then, they split into two major lineages. Let me see. Let me see if I can find a good diagram here. This'll work. So this is a family tree of the ceratosaurs. If you know how to read family trees, well, just in case you don't know, I'll explain this for you. So on the screen, you can see my mouse cursor here. So right here, we have the base. This is Ceratosauria. This is where you'd find stuff like Ceratosaurus. In the late Jurassic/Cretaceous, there was a split. One group became really lightly built. They became really fast runners. Think kind of like the ornithomimids, like a gallimimus sort of thing, but originating from a ceratosaur body plan. It's weird. The other group doubled down on that body plan. They became really short, really stocky, and weirdly enough, it seems that a lot of them started to hunt small sauropods, which is weird. And almost all of these are restricted to the southern continents. So, South America, Africa, uh, India, southernmost Asia, and maybe a little bit in Australia. They're very southern in their distribution. And go figure, Madagascar being a southern subcontinent, its main big predators at the end of the days of dinosaurs weren't things like T-Rex, they were ceratosaurs. The first of which I will go ahead and release from containment. Let's go ahead and pull this up. Oh, nope. I'll go ahead and let it out. So this is a little ceratosaur called Machikosaurus. Now, again, I'm going to switch to a different skin. Again, keep in mind, this is a relative of Ceratosaurus. But by the time you get to the end of dinosaurs, things get weird, especially on islands. And Machikosaurus here is really, really weird. Also, yes, Vanessa, I know you hate cladograms. I'm sorry. Anyway, Machikosaurus here is a really weird, really freaky little dinosaur. And really quick, I'm just going to show you guys its skull. Because it is bizarre. Also, really quick, drink for a new dinosaur. Really weird. So, most dinosaurs, if you look at their skulls, their teeth are restricted to the top edge of the lower jaw, so they usually stop right around here, and then they go back. Machikosaurus decides to completely dump that idea, and its teeth extend to point out from its lower jaw. They point forward and hook up. They're really weird. And as is often the case with a lot of animals, when you get weird teeth, you're usually doing weird things. Now, we're not 100% certain what Machikosaurus was doing with these really weird teeth. Also, before I forget, the name is actually kind of funny for Machikosaurus here. So, Machikosaurus itself means fierce lizard. It's another Malagasy word, which again, I really like. The species name is Knopfleri, after the lead singer of the band The Dire Straits. Because while they were excavating, the team digging this thing up was listening to a lot of music from the Dire Straits. It's like Lucy the Australopithecus, where they were listening to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I love when little things like this just slip into science. I love it. I really do love it. Also, thank you, Vanessa, for another super sticker, which unfortunately does not show up in the stream here, but thank you. That's a drink. Anyway, Machikosaurus. Weird teeth. What was it doing? Well, there are a few ideas. First off, if you focus on the teeth near the front of the lower jaw, near the front of the jaws, you can see that they're fairly long and they don't have a lot of curve. Now that's weird. That's a trait you usually see in animals that are hunting very slippery prey. They want teeth that stab in easily so they can grab it quick. As you can probably guess, that's something you often see with animals that hunt fish. Then if you look at the rest of the teeth for Machikosaurus, they're very backwards curving. You want teeth like that to keep prey in your mouth. So, a very common hypothesis that I agree with is Machikosaurus may have been hunting fish or frogs, maybe even Beelzebufo, just small, slippery prey. Just nabbing them with his teeth and then chomping it down. It's an interesting mode of life that we don't see in a lot of theropod dinosaurs. The most common ones we do see this in are Spinosaurs, for example. Okay. Really quick here. So Caden, Rex is a nickname I go by. I will put my email in the chat right now. It's just my channel name at gmail.com, but I'll type it anyway if you want to note it down. There you go. If you want to just email me, I can put you in contact with Vanessa, or I can just send Darren's contact info straight to you. But yeah, it's just a nickname I go by. Usually on YouTube, I go by Doc, but I also go by Rex sometimes. Anyway, Machikosaurus. Cute little thing, weird little thing. Really, really weird little thing. And again, it's a ceratosaur, apparently. Which evolution can do crazy things, especially when you don't check in with an animal for 80 million years. Which is about the time between Ceratosaurus and Machikosaurus. But Machikosaurus is not the only ceratosaur known from late Cretaceous Madagascar. The other very famous ceratosaur from this formation is called Majungasaurus. And I'll just go ahead and let them come out of their pen here. This is Majungasaurus. Everybody, meet the killer sausage. Named because it looks like a killer sausage. As I already said, Majungasaurus here is a ceratosaur, a descendant of Ceratosaurus and its relatives. But they went in a really, really, really weird direction. See, something you can't really appreciate in here, well, actually, let me... I'm just trying to think of a way to get a sense of scale in here. Let me... can I put a... You know, I can go ahead and delete this. Let me put a Jeep in here to give you guys a sense of scale. Because Majungasaurus is one of the most weirdly proportioned animals I have ever looked at. It is proportioned more like a weasel than it is like another theropod dinosaur. Oh, and actually, this one is too big. uh, Majungasaurus here should be about 4.5 feet tall at the hip. It is short, but absurdly long bodied for a dinosaur. It has a very strange body shape. We don't know why. It's just weird. It also has a kind of weird history that actually is kind of a bit of fun to talk about. So, if you're familiar with dinosaurs, you may have at some point heard the name Majungatholus, especially if you ever watched a little series called Jurassic Fight Club, which I will say, Vanessa, I've been wanting to ask your opinion on that, especially the Nanotyrannus. Anyway, Majungatholus was an old name given to some remains from the Maverano Formation. See, there was a fossil found that looked like a weird little dome, like one you'd see for a pachycephalosaur. Um, and Tholus is a common word added to pachycephalosaur names, so the discoverers named it Majungatholus, the pachycephalosaur from Majunga. It took us decades to realize that that little dome was this stupid little horn in the middle of this thing's head. It it's absurd. It's weird. It's crazy. It's stupid, but it's a thing. It's an animal and somehow this is one of my favorite dinosaurs. Somehow. Um anyway, Majungasaurus. Again, it's a ceratosaur. And just looking at it, you can kind of see the family resemblance a little bit. Long body, low body, right? But Majungasaurus is part of a lineage called the Abelisaurids, which are, derived from ceratosaurs. Abelisaurids share this very low, very long body type. They get weirdly long necks, weirdly long tails, and they keep this really long torso that you only really see in more primitive theropods. A lot of later theropods shorten up the torso, but these guys don't. They keep it long. And to be completely honest, we're not entirely sure what they were doing. um Apparently they were incredibly successful even with these tiny legs. They were really really good hunters. We have tooth marks from ooh, this is a really pretty skin. We have tooth marks from Majungasaurus on a lot of things from the Maverano. We have it on sauropods. We might have it on Machikosaurus. And we also have it on other Majungasaurus, which has given Majungasaurus the reputation of the cannibal dinosaur. Now, did they cannibalize each other? Almost certainly. But why is that Jeep still here? Sorry. But almost every predatory animal will cannibalize if they need to. Almost any predatory animal you can think of, almost all of them will cannibalize if they absolutely have to. So it really isn't that weird. Also, sorry, there's something I need to catch up on things. Um Oh yes. For those who for those who caught the first paleo stream that I had on this channel about pachycephalosaurs, Vanessa here might seem a little familiar. It was her research that I was referencing during most of that stream. She's the one that figured out the link between Dracorex, Stygimoloch, and Pachycephalosaurus. And like I said, Caden, if you email me, again, it's just doctordino@gmail.com. I can give you her contact info, and she can give you Darren Nash's. Vanessa doesn't want to talk about Nano. Yeah, I know. Lethargo asked if that is a long neck for a theropod. It is, indeed. Um, oh, and Vanessa mentions long neck and body, teeny arms. Funny enough, they are not teeny enough in this model. So here's the weird thing about Majungasaurus and a lot of other abelisaurs. They do this weird thing where they basically lose function in their arms. And again, we don't know why. Abelisaurs just do things. And it doesn't make any sense, but somehow they appear to have been the most successful predatory dinosaurs in the southern hemisphere during the late Cretaceous. Weasel supremacy, I guess. Zooming in a little bit, the arms here, let me see if I can pull up a skeleton, because it is actually absurd. Okay, it's going to be in somewhat low quality, but these are Majungasaurus's shoulder, humerus, and the rest of its arms. It is entirely wrong. Nothing should have these proportions. It has a pretty dinky but kind of normal looking humerus. This chunk of bones here are the radius and ulna. So let me pull down my sleeve. So this bit here, that's that tiny chunk. And then the fingers are just stapled on the end. They don't have metacarpals. And almost every abelisaur it is like this. It's insane. It's terrible. It's horrible. I don't know why they do this, but somehow I still love this dopey, weird cannibal monster. Ugh. And people give T-Rex crap for its tiny arms. And like I've kind of hinted at, we don't know why they do this. We have no idea. With that said, Majungasaurus is special for some other reasons. When this dinosaur was described, like properly described, in the early 2000s, almost every one of its bones was 3D scanned and uploaded to the internet. If you want to, and you look in the right places, you can download a Majungasaurus, almost the entire skeleton, and use it for research. And I think that is an absolutely glorious thing. In fact, I've already brought up the exceptional preservation in the Mavorano Formation. Majungasaurus's bones are so well preserved, not only do we have muscle scars, not only do we have ligament scars, showing how big its muscles were and how strong they were. We have scars Uh, uh, huh. Oh, wait. Am I back? I'm back. Okay. Sorry. I lost. It might be back. We'll see if it comes back. Um, there, hear me? Um, oh, this is great. Come on. Okay, I think it's back. Sorry. Once in a blue moon, my internet disappears. It goes extinct. Um, of course it did. Of course it did. Um, okay. The cool thing about Majungasaurus. Okay, muscle scars from, or we have scars on its bones from muscles, ligaments, and air sacs. This dinosaur had lungs like a bird. This thing breathed like a bird. That's what I've been trying to say for the last 2 minutes. And it finally went through. I'm hoping. Oh, boy. Now, what's crazy about that? Majungasaurus here is descended from one of the earliest diverging groups of theropods we know of. That means that if Majungasaurus had this, and birds have this, then it's a pretty good guess that most of the other theropod dinosaurs had it too. Meaning they breathe like birds. They were super efficient in their breathing. That comes with a real metabolism and a really active lifestyle. And Jurassic World crashed, but you know what? We're just going to leave it for now. Of course, all these mistakes happen towards the end. I mean, I'm glad they happened towards the end, but of course. Anyway, yes, the giant killer sausage breathed like a bird, as Caden says. Now, if this is ancestral to theropods, as it seems to be, is it possible it was ancestral to other dinosaurs? Well, in some sauropods, they seem to have a similar form of breathing system, which might help explain how they got so big. I don't know if we have any evidence for that in ornithischians, like ceratopsians and chylosaurs and hadrosaurs. Vanessa can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we do. And yet the weird thing is, we have evidence for a similar breathing system in pterosaurs, which separated even farther back than all dinosaurs appear to have separated from each other. So did the ornithischians lose that system, or are they maybe not as closely related? It's kind of a fun little question, just to spring on at the end. With that said, we have been going for about an hour and a half. I hope you all enjoyed this look at the weird world of late Cretaceous Madagascar. I want to thank all of you for coming. If you have any last questions to ask, please feel free to ask them. And I do want to give a special thanks to the people who helped donate to the stream. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, VJ Manda. And thank you, Lethargo. Or Lethargo. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name. In total, it looks like in total, it looks like we raised about $40, and I really appreciate that. All that money is going to go to helping me do field work this summer. Like I said, the more time I can take off work, the more field work I can do, and the more research I can do as well. Thank you for a great evening, everybody, and I hope you all have a good one. I'll see you soon.